Next piece, which ties in. Now, some of this was originally meant for Alan's show last Sunday, but Alan soldiered on despite the flu and time kind of ran out. So here is a fuller, more detailed piece of looking at the world of religion, spiritual-based groups, and also the hidden cults, aligned with the further examples of the word magic. We'll start, as it was an Irish show, predominantly people in Ireland are, in fact all people in Ireland are Catholics. I know the Protestants won't like that, but it's the truth. And we'll start with Catholic, and let's look at them closely, shall we, and his story. They have or had large amounts of wealth, whilst many of their followers struggled in poverty. Yet it was the church and their assassin crew called the Knights Templar who created the world's first bank and also introduced usury, which was stationed along the old trade routes. They took gold and silver, which is the only real form of money, and gave people pieces of paper. Then they raided the towns where the trading took place, where the people who were trading, who had already handed in their gold and silver, and they killed the people in the town. So those that never returned for their gold and silver, they then claimed that gold and silver of the people they killed, and the funds went to the church. They are involved extensively in pedophilia. It's no longer a conspiracy. Involved in child trafficking via the Vatican Bank, looting via the Vatican Bank. They created the mafia as a money laundering operation. They created the P2 Lodge, which is another of the Five Eyes crew who take part in assassinating people, overthrowing countries, killing the people, and stealing their resources. They partake in ritual sacrifice below the Vatican, initiated the Dutch-led, not British-led, destruction of Ireland via the Battle of the Boyne, created the divide between the Irish people, and yes, they can argue that was the Protestants, the Church of England, and the Queen, but Protestants is a Catholic religion in disguise. The original Protestants, it's in the word, were Catholics who were protesting against the crimes and corruption of the Roman Church. The C of E, Church of England, is also ran by the Vatican. Took part in several heinous crimes within Ireland and several other places involving children, sexual abuse, trading, torture and death via the nuns. Forced in a problem, reaction, solution tactic, and thousands of Irish people onto boats and over to the next conquest of land called America, in appalling conditions, many of which were slaves or became slaves. His story says they were fleeing religious persecution, but once they had split the Catholic religion and created Protestants so that the people can fight each other, they then set up the next stage, and how the pilgrims were fleeing the nasty Brits and moving towards favouring the more nicer Dutch. Out of the frying pan into the fire springs to mind, and another problem reaction solution achieved. Along with the fake enemies, Catholic and Protestant programme launched based on a false history they gave to the people, and the classic boogeyman saviour programme. Catholics, Protestants are not your enemies. Protestants, Catholics are not your enemies. It is and always was the Church. Pilgrims were not fleeing the England Church and State, but were being corralled by the Zionist-led Dutch movement. Christopher Columbus, who to this day we are told founded America. Why was it lost? Did he rise the whole continent out the water like a turtle? He didn't find it at all. It was the next stage of the Roman Empire under the auspices of the Hebraic Kalima movement. Columbus was also funded for that journey by the Vatican. The same church set up fake charities like the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, and Mother Teresa. Most of the funds were or are funneled back to the church, same as the mafia. They went about during the 1500s to the 1700s and possibly beyond, setting fire to the whole of Europe, all the major cities, and that's something that's not well known, to destroy the history of Europe and its peoples. The Vatican Church was also the holder of all the birth certificates and bonded us to them as chattel, then leveraged vast funds against those bonds called stocks. Stocks are a bind term. Then looted our personal funds at age 7 when we were declared lost at sea, as in the Holy See. They burned several people alive during the alleged witches phase, but these were people exposing the church. The same church is represented by a negative ET race with the fish hats, the Dogon from Sirius, and worships the even more negative race of ETs, the serpents. Check out the roof of the auditorium in the Vatican. Check out the floor-to-ceiling bronze statue. They state it is Jesus rising out of the nuclear ashes. How? When allegedly new-tech nuclear bombs were started in the 1940s. So it couldn't have been Jesus. In fact, it's not Jesus at all. Once you look closely, it is a reptilian and part of the serpent race. 40 to 60 foot high reptilian. And the Pope sits in the chair below it, being patted on the head. They also burnt alive one of Source's teachers, Anna, in the 1500s. They also hunted down and murdered Mary Magdalene and one of her children. They hunted down and killed the real Jesus, which is Radomir. They changed the Easter festival from Ostara to Easter to disguise their pagan-based deities. They wrote a story about the winter solstice into an Easter narrative, changed sun, S-U-N, into sun, S-O-N, and on December the 21st, the shortest day in the winter solstice, the sun goes down below the horizon for the next 3 days. Behind the sun in the night sky is the constellation called the Southern Cross. So the sun dips below the horizon for 3 days, so the sun died for 3 days on the cross. On December the 25th, the sun rises above the horizon and is reborn. So the sun died for 3 days, the 3 days of darkness, and then was reborn and went into the heavens. Sound familiar? They created all of your holidays, which is Holy Day. All are pagan ritual sacrifice human days to their fake gods. They were active in World War II of undercover missions to destroy many people, particularly of Aryan descent. Check out the From Russia with Love series for more details on that. Of how the CIA agent was flying in on secret military missions to inform the Vatican of what was going on. From Russia with Love 7, I think. Their recent popes. One was a gun runner for the junta in South America. One sold cyanide to the Nazis. Another was an SS officer. And no, Nazis are not Germans by and large. They were Zionist Kalimars, or the sub-grey race. They burned books of anything that went against the narrative of the church, but the burning was a ceremony only. They removed the vital books prior and stored them now in the Vatican Library and under the house in Malta. Galileo, Da Vinci and Copernicus were victims of their oppression. Protected by the Knights of Malta, another thug-based assassin group connected to the church, of which two lead, now it's one because the other one died, two lead IRA members are both members of the Knights of Malta. Oops. It was they who destroyed France with their Zionist-based Franks and the Merovingians, and they who worship the cat, which is the cult of Ra, whose only purpose was the takeover of this planet and the destruction of all humans. That is why they are called the Catholics. And if you don't believe me on that, go and read the scripture in the middle of Central Park, go figure, New York, on the needle, Cleopatra's Needle, celebrating Ra and his reptilian offspring destroying humans. It's all in your face. And people go to these Catholic churches for spiritual or God-based, for morality, well-being and a sense of servitude to their God. I'm sorry, you were fooled big time. All religions and spiritual-based practices are connected to religion are all fake. And an external version of seeking a fake God when the real God source is already inside of you, just waiting for you to tap into. All these messiahs and gods and archangels were all fake. In every religion or spiritual-based practice, messiahs are 10 a penny and basically ego-based airheads declaring themselves above all others. No one is above anybody else, and I mean no one. A real messiah or God would not announce it. They would be here to do a duty and to help humanity, not stand around in crowds demanding servitude, sacrifices, and all bow down to the Great One. That is ego. The real source would never ask or do that. ever. As for all the offshoots like Baptist, Methodist, Puritan, Episcopal, Evangelical, Lutheran, etc., they're all offshoots of the same church, no matter which way you mask it. Divide and conquer is the main tactic, then throw in problem, reaction, and they provide us with the solution they wanted, not what we wanted. Mormons, another but more direct version of the cult of Ra. Like the Vatican, has vast amounts of wealth, stolen under false pretenses, and sometimes the use of violence-based threats to and from the followers. A fake religion based on some fake Egyptian plates that no one other than the creator and the alleged writer of their manifesto ever saw. Egyptian symbolism everywhere. The main centre is called a temple. All temples are ritual sacrifice centres for humans and animals. All of them. They are heavily involved in pederasty and also pedophilia, a fear-based cult that demands 10 to 20% of your earnings or else you lose your job, contract or worse. A hedonistic and tantric-based cult that involves a sexual free-for-all involving again pedophilia, incest and wife swapping from an overview that is an energy-based harvesting tactic, but also has the propensity to spiritually degrade your vessel due to having several sexual-based cords connected to you via the sex act, more so if it involves buggery. Africa relies on varying ET-based cultures like the Dogon that were predominant there, plus European-based messiahs for their varying religions, like Rabbi Zavi and the other fake self-created messiah like Oscar Ernst Bernhard under the pen name Abdu Rushin and his Grail message doctrine. They come under misdirection and ego-based practices. Then you have the Zionist sub-grey element again in Ethiopia and the neighbouring countries. They have oppressed into a following their cult-based religion. Then we have the Mecca, based on the Sirius star system technology that harvests the energy of all the people who pray to it several times a day. And as for the festival, oh dear. Like the Maypole Festival, all swirl around the pole in a retrograde motion, creating a vortex for the harvesting of energy. Your energy. Enlightenment my arse. For evidence of how easy it is within a culture to create false gods, one needs to look no further than the Pacific Islands. For decades, their gods were the US military of all people, who dropped supplies for their soul dyers in readiness for the next ritual sacrifice of humans during World War II. The natives saw them as the return of the gods in their fiery chariots. And when the US military left, they built replica planes long after the military left, hoping for the return of the gods, and supplies dropped from the air. That's how easy it is to create false gods. The US military came bearing gifts from the gods. Dearly me. East and spiritual-based practices we have covered recently. Rampant corruption. The Dalai Lama is a CIA agent. Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, chanting mantras, mandalas, Shiva, Vishnu, and other deities of that region, all fake. Massive loose fest harvesting involving tantric, CDs and other spiritual-based practices, and again the heavy use of the Messiah complex, using threats and intimidation. Again the use of sexual-based coercion and some of the most barbaric ritual sacrifices the planet over. That involves mass human and animal sacrifice, including the evidence of bestiality with the animals inside the temples. Like I said, all temples supposedly place of worship, yet is achieving its main goal of harvesting our energy, and is a sacrifice centre. This culture also denigrates, abuses and treats women as sex objects, things to use and abuse, and second-class citizens, just like the African and Middle East cultures. India alone sacrifices 7,000 of their people per day. 7,000 per day. And where are all the morally superior, enlightened spiritualists whilst this is going on? Are they stopping this carnage? No. Because their fake God said it was okay. Wrong. The thing that needs sacrificing are these fake gods, fake angels, ark or otherwise, and fake messiahs in all cultures, because then what is left is just you and source, the way life was meant to be. India, Tibet, and China, with their spiritual-based practices, add in America and their sing Kumbaya, love and light, and all will be well. Does anyone not ask why so many in just those 4 countries alone are suffering, dying, being sacrificed? Like 900,000 children per year in America alone. Yes, you heard that right. Per year. That is starving, homeless and crime. If all these practices were so righteous in the real world and real, the world would be a much better place, would it not? But the fact is, once you snap out of your zombified amnesia, is the world's not a better place. If these practices all worked, the world would be a better place. It's not. %80 of the planet or more are involved in some form of religion or spiritual practices that allegedly teaches you all kinds of nice things, and yet the planet is divided, violent, chaotic, and the worst aspect, non-caring. Which God teaches you that? There is zero evidence it produces what it says it does. None. The evidence of darkness is all around you, and that program encompasses everything and subsequently darkens everything. There is a common trait throughout alt media, and in particular CIA agent Stephen Greer, and also the Ancient Alien Sellout crew, that these gods or ETs all came for our development. And they gave us various technology and understanding. And yes, that did take place. But all under contract, of which humans were oblivious to, just like it was like the seducement, just like the Draco did 16,500 years ago. It was all very nice initially. Then the mirror was moved sideways and the illusion was no more. And it's only now we're coming out of that period of time. Just like religions, the ETs have harvested, consumed, loosed, traded, trafficked, and enslaved us. Has anyone considered that perhaps religion and ETs are based on the same principles and also practices? And the answer, if you research for yourself, is yes. They are one and the same. And humans have been duped on a massive scale that has done untold damage. Many never made it. Many will not make it because of that damage. Which group is the predominant in all religions? In fact, all religions stems from and were created by one group. Their books, the Torah and Talmud, they go by several names. Both of those books think humans are expendable slaves with the most heinous writing, directives and acts ever on this planet. Read them yourself. They go by Hebrews, Israelites, Jesuits, Jews, Subgrays, Zionist, Kalimar, Cult of Ra, Anunnaki and Anunnaki Zionists, all of which comes under the order of the Black Sun, who worship evil and death. And people want to go to their churches and temples? All who go to their churches, temples and places of worship are participating, consenting to and condoning their evil practices. There are no ifs or buts anymore. Your inner weakness has allowed you to be duped and harvested. Your focus on the external and ignoring the internal strength, abilities and source has allowed these hideous practices to go on for far too long. You are their battery, their life force energy. Without you participating, none of this would exist. But Thomas, my church is not like that. It is. It's part of the system. But the church does good things, I heard one member say. None thinking again. The people in the church did good things, not the actual building or the movement. You did the good things. And people have to stop externalizing it. It was you. Before we go into the music break, 7 things about books. 1. God never wrote a book. 2. Jesus never wrote a book. 3. Muhammad never wrote a book. 4. Deities never wrote a book. 5. Yahweh never wrote a book. 6. Lucifer never wrote a book. 7. Satan never wrote a book. The only ones who wrote books were the disciples of the dark forces and evil.